It was supposed to be the most magical night of the year, a celebration filled with music, laughter, and the warm glow of candlelight. The annual Christmas Carol concert at the Grand Palace was a tradition beloved by millions, a moment when the royal family opened its doors, if only symbolically, to the world. Glittering decorations lined the hallways. The scent of pine and cinnamon permeated the air, and everywhere you looked, there was a sense of joy, until the unthinkable happened. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Picture this. The doors creak open, and a figure slips silently through the crowd, carrying a bag that seemed too large for a simple notebook or camera. No one notices at first, not even the ushers, not even the vigilant security detail. But Kate, standing at the front, poised and radiant in emerald green, senses something is wrong. It's a subtle shift, a ripple in the atmosphere, a faint click of a camera shutter that doesn't belong. She knows immediately, something or someone isn't supposed to be here. You might be thinking, could this really happen? A spy infiltrating a royal Christmas concert? And not just any spy, but someone allegedly sent with the express purpose of capturing content for a streaming platform. A platform known for exclusive documentaries, for intimate behind-the-scenes footage, for stories that sell. The audacity of it is staggering. Who would dare? And why target a family holiday event, of all places? Kate's pulse quickens. She scans the crowd with the precision of a seasoned observer, eyes locking on a figure lurking near the orchestra pit, seemingly blending into the shadows. There's a tension in the air, an almost cinematic pause as if the world has held its breath for a moment. This isn't just a security breach. It's a violation of a sacred moment, an intrusion into the sanctity of family tradition. And in that instant, she makes a decision that will set off a chain of events no one could have anticipated. Imagine the courage it takes to act in a situation like this. To stand in the spotlight, poised for an audience of thousands, while knowing a hidden threat is inches away. The decision to call security is swift, but deliberate. The words are barely audible over the swelling carols, yet they carry weight, authority, and urgency. "We have an intruder," Kate whispers into her discreet communication device. Immediate response required. The reaction is almost instantaneous. Security teams, previously blending into the background, spring into action with the precision of a military unit. They move silently yet decisively, navigating the ornate hallways and candlelit corridors, closing in on the mysterious figure who is now visibly flustered. Cameras are switched off, bags are inspected, and questions are demanded. The once festive atmosphere now hums with tension. Guests murmur, unsure whether this is part of the evening's entertainment or a real-life drama unfolding before their eyes. And here's where it gets even more complicated. The intruder isn't just a random observer or a fan trying to get a glimpse of the royals. No, the implications are far more serious. The documents, the devices, the suspicious behavior all point to one shocking possibility. Someone sent deliberately to capture proprietary content, exclusive material that was meant to remain private. And the name whispered in the corridors, the one that makes even the most composed aides glance nervously at each other, is one no one expected. Could it really be true? Could someone with ties, however tenuous, to a rival faction or a controversial figure in the media world, be orchestrating this intrusion? The thought alone sends a shiver down the spine. And as Kate watches, poised but resolute, a flood of questions races through her mind. How deep does this go? Who else knows? And perhaps most importantly, what will happen if this private moment is broadcast to the world? The concert continues, at least on the surface. Carols swell, voices join in, and the glittering hall masks the undercurrent of chaos. But behind the scenes, a quiet battle of wits and will is unfolding. Kate, ever vigilant, is no longer just a guest or a figurehead. She has become the central player in a drama with stakes far higher than anyone could have imagined. Every glance, every gesture, every whisper carries significance. Every second counts. You might wonder, why would someone risk so much for content? The world of media and streaming platforms is ruthlessly competitive, but this was different. This was personal. The strategy wasn't just about capturing footage. It was about influence, leverage, and, most dangerously, narrative control. Whoever orchestrated this breach understood the power of images, the weight of perception, and the explosive potential of secrets revealed at precisely the wrong time. And so, the night unfolds, a tense interplay of elegance, fear, and calculated action. Kate moves with grace under pressure, coordinating with security, guiding her family and guests with subtle cues, all while maintaining the facade of serene composure. Yet the tension is palpable. The unseen eyes, the hidden cameras, the whispered plans of someone determined to pierce the veil of privacy, all create a storm beneath the glittering surface. But what nobody knew, not even Kate herself in that moment, was that the night was about to take a turn even more unexpected. A discovery would be made, a revelation that would shake assumptions, force impossible decisions, and ignite a chain reaction of events that no royal etiquette manual could have prepared anyone for. And just when it seems the intruder has been neutralized, just when the audience believes the evening will return to normalcy, a subtle, almost imperceptible movement in the crowd signals that the real story has only just begun. The spy, or perhaps someone even more dangerous, was not finished. In that moment, Kate's heart sinks, because what comes next will test loyalty, courage, and the very limits of discretion. And the world outside the palace walls has no idea what is about to unfold behind closed doors. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The palace had never felt so tense. The glittering chandeliers reflected not just the warm glow of candlelight, but also the flicker of unease that danced through the hallways. Guests arrived in elegant gowns and tuxedos, smiling politely, exchanging pleasantries as though they had no idea of the drama brewing just beyond the music and laughter. But Kate knew. She could feel it in the very air around her, a subtle vibration of danger, the kind only someone attuned to royal protocol and the delicate balance of appearances could detect. She moved through the crowd with the poise of a queen-in-waiting, nodding to familiar faces, offering soft words of encouragement to performers, all the while her mind running through scenarios, contingency plans, and the endless what-ifs that kept her awake in the quiet moments before events like this. Every Christmas Carol concert was a tradition, yes, but every year brought its own unpredictabilities. And tonight was unlike any other. It began with a simple observation. A man, blending into the shadows near the choir, a notebook in hand, and a subtle camera attached to the strap of his coat. At first glance, he looked harmless, just another attendee eager to capture memories of a festive night. But Kate's instincts, honed by years of navigating public scrutiny, told her otherwise. The way he lingered too long near the performers, the quick glances around the room as if measuring escape routes, the unnatural stillness in his posture, it all screamed warning. She couldn't ignore it. She had to act. The decision to alert security was swift, almost reflexive. Her fingers brushed the edge of her clutch, where a small, secure communication device rested. Immediate response, she murmured, voice low but resolute. It was a command, but it was also a signal to herself, a way to channel her anxiety into action. And then came the delicate dance, the careful orchestration of authority and discretion. Security personnel moved silently, like shadows themselves, converging on the suspect without alarming the audience. Kate's eyes followed every step, calculating, anticipating, assessing. She knew that the smallest misstep could ruin the evening, create panic, or worse, alert the intruder that they had been discovered. Meanwhile, the choir's voices swelled, unaware of the tension threading through the room. The juxtaposition was surreal. Angelic melodies clashing against the silent storm of intrigue unfolding in the back rows. Kate's mind raced. Who could have sent this spy? What information were they after? And why now, during a night meant to embody warmth, celebration, and unity? The answers were elusive, but the implications were clear. If this intrusion succeeded, the consequences could ripple far beyond a single evening. The images, the recordings, the exclusive footage. It could be leveraged, manipulated, or weaponized in ways that would alter public perception, fuel gossip, and destabilize the carefully curated narrative of the royal family. Security closed in. The man was caught between corridors, his movements halted, his composure slipping. Questions were asked, answers demanded. He maintained a veneer of calm, but Kate could see the tension in the set of his jaw, the micro-expressions that betrayed a desperate attempt to stay in control. And then came the revelation that nobody saw coming. The man wasn't working alone. A network, a plan, a deliberate attempt to infiltrate the palace and extract content for a mysterious, high-profile project. The implications were staggering. It wasn't just about one spy. It was about a coordinated effort, a strategy designed to get inside the walls, into private moments, and out into the public eye. Kate's mind spun with possibilities. What would this mean for the family? For their public image? And for the delicate balance of privacy and transparency that she had fought so hard to maintain? Every instinct told her to act decisively, but every action carried risk. And then, as if orchestrated for maximum suspense, the choir concluded their carol. Applause erupted, and the hall seemed to exhale collectively, a momentary reprieve from the tension. But Kate knew it was only temporary. The real drama was just beginning. Somewhere in the shadows, plans were still unfolding, and the night's events were far from over. Because what Kate didn't yet realize was that the spy had a contact inside the palace. A connection so subtle, so well hidden, that even the most vigilant security measures might fail to detect it. And when that connection made its move, the consequences would shock everyone in attendance, alter the course of the evening, and reveal secrets that had been carefully guarded for decades. But before anyone could prepare for what came next, a soft click echoed near the grand staircase, barely audible over the lingering applause. Kate's eyes narrowed. She knew, instinctively, that the night was about to take a turn she could not have anticipated, and that nothing would ever be the same again. What happened next would push everyone to the edge of uncertainty, revealing hidden motives, fractured alliances, and a danger that had been lying in wait, patient and invisible, until the perfect moment to strike. And the question now was, would Kate be able to protect her family, her guests, and the sanctity of the night, or had the spy already gained the advantage? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The hall had regained its outward sense of normalcy, but behind the glittering chandeliers and polished smiles, a storm of uncertainty was brewing. Kate could feel it in every corner of the palace. Her instincts screamed that the spy incident was not a one-off intrusion. It was a signal, a warning, and possibly the first act of a meticulously planned operation. As she moved through the corridors, the soft rustle of silk gowns and quiet murmur of staff echoed alongside the low hum of anxiety that seemed to radiate from her. The guests were oblivious to the tension threading through the palace walls, but Kate's mind was a whirlwind of calculations, probabilities, and worst-case scenarios. Every detail mattered. The placement of security personnel, the timing of carols, the flow of attendees through the hall. One misstep could unravel the careful balance she had fought to maintain for years. Her thoughts kept returning to the man caught earlier, the supposed spy. He had been questioned, restrained, and yet his calm defiance hinted at something deeper. He wasn't just a lone operator. He was part of something larger, something orchestrated with precision. But what could it be? Who was pulling the strings? And what exactly did they hope to gain from infiltrating a family celebration? The palace, with all its centuries of tradition, suddenly felt like a chessboard. Every movement mattered, every observer had a role, and every shadow could conceal a player with intentions that remained frustratingly opaque. Kate's mind raced through scenarios. Could it be a media stunt designed to destabilize the family's public image? Or was it a personal vendetta masked as a professional espionage attempt? The lines were blurred, and the stakes were higher than she had imagined. Meanwhile, the intruder's behavior had left subtle clues, almost imperceptible to anyone but Kate. The way he had glanced towards certain rooms, the way he had moved his hands over the notebook and camera, the fleeting hesitation when he noticed security approaching, all of it suggested planning, forethought, and a motive that was more intricate than anyone could guess. She realized, with a chill, that this was not about casual filming or curiosity. It was about control, leverage, and secrets waiting to be exploited. Kate's aides whispered behind closed doors, exchanging nervous glances, but the details they had uncovered only deepened the mystery. Certain areas of the palace had been targeted, communications intercepted, even guest seating analyzed for optimal visibility. It wasn't random, it was deliberate, calculated, and almost chillingly meticulous. Someone had studied the palace, understood its rhythms, and chosen this night for maximum impact. As she processed the implications, Kate couldn't help but think about the broader consequences. Every royal event was scrutinized, every gesture dissected, and every misstep magnified. If this intrusion succeeded, it would not just be a breach of privacy. It could shift the narrative entirely. It could embolden rivals, fuel speculation, and create a cascade of headlines that no one could control. The most alarming realization, however, was the possibility that the spy had allies. The palace was vast, with hidden corridors, staff who came and went, and private rooms accessible only to those with clearance. Kate's mind raced through the names of staff, associates, and anyone with access, wondering if someone had been compromised. The thought made her pulse quicken. The threat wasn't just external, it could be internal as well. And then came the first real twist. In a discreet conversation with her closest aides, Kate learned that the spy's presence had been anticipated by someone she hadn't expected. A warning had been sent, cryptic and indirect, hinting at a breach that could occur at the Christmas Carol concert. But no one had believed it could be so precise, so audacious, and so potentially devastating. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture was more alarming than anyone could have imagined. Kate felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Every decision she made now had consequences not just for her family, but for the entire palace staff, the guests, and the image of the royal family itself. The evening that was meant to celebrate joy and tradition had become a high-stakes test of judgment, composure, and strategic thinking. She began to piece together a mental timeline. The spy's movements, the subtle signals, the timing of carols, even the placement of the orchestra. It all seemed orchestrated to create a moment where privacy could be violated and secrets could be extracted with surgical precision. And the more she analyzed it, the clearer it became. The spy's mission was not random. Someone had engineered this moment for a very specific reason. Questions swirled in her mind. Who could have orchestrated such a complex plan? What were their ultimate goals? And most importantly, how far were they willing to go to achieve them? Kate realized with a sinking feeling that this was not a simple act of curiosity or professional overreach. It was a calculated attempt to penetrate the inner sanctum of her life, her family, and the palace itself. And just when she thought she had anticipated every variable, a startling discovery changed everything. A seemingly innocuous envelope, left on a side table by a guest, contained evidence that the spy had not acted alone. Someone else, inside the palace, had facilitated their movements, guided them, and possibly even fed them information. The realization hit like a thunderclap. The breach was far more serious than she had imagined. As the night wore on, Kate moved through the palace with a heightened sense of awareness. Every shadow seemed alive, every murmur a potential clue, and every glance a possible threat. She understood that the true danger was not just the spy who had been caught, but the network that remained unseen, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then, just as she thought she had stabilized the situation, a subtle sound, a faint shuffle in a remote corridor, made her pause. Her instincts, sharp and unwavering, told her that someone was watching, waiting, and preparing to make their next move. The Christmas Carol concert, which had begun as a celebration of music and tradition, had become a stage for intrigue, betrayal, and a hidden agenda that threatened to unravel everything. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The night had settled into a deceptive calm. The Christmas lights glimmered on the towering trees in the palace courtyard, reflecting off polished floors and gilded mirrors. Guests laughed politely, clinking glasses of champagne, utterly unaware that beneath the sparkle, a quiet battle was unfolding, one of secrecy, strategy, and stakes far higher than any festive celebration should bear. Kate moved with careful precision, navigating the corridors with the fluid grace of someone who had long mastered the art of public poise while managing private crises. Every step was deliberate, every glance calculated. She could feel the lingering tension from the earlier intrusion, the residue of adrenaline that never quite left when one had just narrowly averted a potential disaster. Her mind kept returning to the spy. Question after question demanded answers. How did he gain access to the palace so easily? How had he anticipated the layout, the flow of guests, the precise moments where he could act without detection? And most chillingly, who had sent him? There was a pattern here, something methodical and intentional, that suggested this was far from an isolated incident. As Kate reached the grand staircase, she paused, her eyes scanning the hall for anomalies. At first glance, nothing seemed out of place. Guests continued to enjoy the evening. Musicians prepared for the next carol, and staff moved discreetly to and fro. Yet she could feel it. The shadows held secrets, and some of those secrets were now moving closer to exposure. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft tap on her shoulder. It was an aide, discreetly handing her a small envelope. Kate's fingers closed over it, and she felt the weight of anticipation settle like a stone in her chest. The envelope contained a note, cryptic, brief, but enough to send a chill racing through her veins. It suggested that the spy had a hidden accomplice, someone with access to the palace who had facilitated his movements. The realization hit her hard. The threat wasn't just external. Someone inside the palace walls had colluded, had provided guidance, had possibly even given instructions on what to capture, when, and how. The trust she placed in those around her, in the staff and inner circle who had always been reliable, now wavered. The enemy was closer than anyone realized, and their next move could be catastrophic. Kate's mind raced as she pieced together potential scenarios. Could the accomplice be a member of the staff, someone posing as loyal but secretly aligned with an outside agenda? Or worse, could it be a guest, an unexpected observer embedded in plain sight, playing a long game to achieve something far more sinister than simple surveillance? The possibilities were endless, each more alarming than the last. Determined to act, Kate summoned her most trusted security personnel to a discreet corner of the palace. The conversation was terse, loaded with urgency. Every word carried significance. Every decision had consequences. She outlined what she knew, the spy's movements, the cryptic note, the possibility of inside assistance. Her team listened, faces tight with concern, but the tension in the room was palpable. This was no longer a mere intrusion. It was a full-blown threat, a test of loyalty, vigilance, and strategy. Meanwhile, the intruder himself remained oblivious, or perhaps deliberately unconcerned. His earlier capture a minor inconvenience in what appeared to be a carefully orchestrated operation. Kate couldn't shake the feeling that the spy was waiting, watching, anticipating the next opportunity. And if he had an inside collaborator, that opportunity could come at any moment, hidden in plain sight. As she surveyed the hall again, a strange sensation prickled at her instincts. Something was off. A guest, positioned near the back, seemed unusually focused on a hallway rather than the ongoing performance. Their attention lingered on the grand staircase, their posture rigid, their expressions too controlled. Kate's intuition, honed over years of managing both public events and private crises, screamed that this person was no ordinary attendee. The pieces began to connect in her mind. The initial intrusion, the cryptic note, the possible insider assistance. It all pointed to a network, a coordinated effort that had been months in planning. And the implications were staggering. Not only had privacy been threatened, but the very trust within the palace walls had been undermined. The foundations of security, loyalty, and discretion were now being tested in ways she could not have anticipated. She moved swiftly, signaling her security detail to monitor specific areas while maintaining the illusion of normalcy for the guests. Every step was a delicate balance of authority and subtlety. The threat was invisible to most, yet immediate, pressing, and potentially devastating. One wrong move could alert the accomplice, or worse, give the spy the leverage he needed to escape or capture sensitive material. And then the first real clue emerged. A faint sound, barely audible over the continuing music, caught Kate's attention, a shuffle near the private corridor that led to administrative offices. Someone was moving stealthily, intentionally masking their presence, and the timing coincided too perfectly with the earlier events to be a coincidence. Kate froze, heart racing, as the pieces fell into place. The spy, the insider, the plan, everything suggested that the next move was imminent, and it could alter the course of the evening entirely. Questions swirled through her mind. Who could be trusted? How deep did this network go? And what was the ultimate objective? Every scenario was more alarming than the last, and yet she had no choice but to act, to anticipate, and to outmaneuver a threat that was invisible, unpredictable, and relentless. But just as she prepared to make her next move, a soft whisper reached her from behind the heavy velvet curtain, a voice she did not recognize, low and urgent, hinting at revelations that would challenge everything she thought she knew about loyalty, trust, and the shadowy forces working against her. And at that moment, Kate understood something terrifying. The spy's network was closer than she had ever imagined, and what was about to be revealed could shatter the evening, the family, and the palace itself. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The palace had returned, at least superficially, to its familiar rhythm. Candlelight shimmered across polished floors, the choir's voices floated through the hall, and laughter echoed in the corridors. But beneath the facade of celebration, an invisible storm was building, one that threatened to engulf everyone in its path. Kate felt it in her bones, the subtle shift of energy, the almost imperceptible tension that pulsed through the walls. Her mind raced back to the earlier intrusion. The spy had been apprehended, but Kate knew better than to believe that caught threats were neutralized threats. The cryptic note, the network, the strange movements of guests and staff. It all pointed to a hidden hand, someone inside the palace itself. And now, the hunt for the accomplice had begun. Kate retraced her steps through the palace, eyes sharp, every movement deliberate. She had to think like the intruder, anticipate the motives, the timing, the patterns. Whoever this accomplice was, they were clever, patient, and ruthless. The first clue had been subtle. A seemingly innocuous question to a staff member, the way someone had lingered too long near a side hallway. The fleeting glance exchanged between two guests that seemed meaningless but now took on a sinister undertone. She pulled her most trusted aides aside, whispering instructions with precise urgency. Surveillance would increase, access points monitored, and movements discreetly tracked. It was a delicate balance. Too much attention, and the accomplice would suspect. Too little, and the threat could escalate beyond control. Kate had to navigate this with precision, like a general maneuvering troops in a silent war. Hours passed. The carols continued, the guests remained blissfully unaware, and the palace seemed bathed in a tranquil glow. But Kate's senses were attuned to every nuance. The shuffle of feet, the subtle shift of a gaze, the quiet sound of paper rustling in a room that should have been empty. The accomplice was here, close, and watching. Then it happened. A slip, almost imperceptible, but enough to catch Kate's attention. A staff member, previously considered reliable, had been seen moving toward the restricted archives with unusual urgency. The timing coincided with the spy's earlier attempt to gather sensitive material, and the precision suggested coordination. Kate's heart raced. Could this be the insider? The person whose loyalty had been compromised? She followed, discreet but unrelenting, through corridors lined with gilded portraits and polished marble. Every step was calculated, every shadow considered. As she approached the suspected staff member, she noticed a subtle tremor in their hands, a hesitation in their stride. The clues were there. The nervous glance over the shoulder, the careful way a hand lingered near a concealed pocket, the micro-expression that betrayed awareness of observation. Kate knew the moment to act had come. She signaled security discreetly, ensuring that the staff member would be intercepted without alarming the rest of the palace. Every second counted. The accomplice's next move could be decisive, and any hesitation might allow them to complete their mission. The confrontation was quiet, controlled, but tense. Security moved in, and the staff member's calm veneer cracked, revealing a mix of fear and determination. Kate stepped closer, her presence commanding yet measured. "We need to talk," she said softly, but with an authority that brooked no argument. The accomplice's reaction was telling. A flicker of recognition, a hint of defiance, and a subtle attempt to conceal something in their pocket. It was all the confirmation Kate needed. This was no random breach. This was planned, deliberate, and carried out with precision. The spy had a partner, someone within the palace, and now the depth of the threat was undeniable. As security secured the individual, Kate pieced together the implications. The accomplice had access, knowledge, and a network that could reach beyond the palace walls. It was no longer just a matter of protecting an event. It was about safeguarding secrets, reputation, and the very fabric of trust within the palace. Every relationship, every interaction, was now a potential vector for exposure. Questions surged in Kate's mind. How long had this person been working with the spy? What had they already planned? And most importantly, who else might be involved, hidden behind smiles and polite conversation? The answers were elusive, but the danger was immediate, pressing, and very real. The accomplice's capture sent a shockwave through the palace's inner circle. Trusted staff whispered in hushed tones, aides exchanged anxious glances, and Kate realized the delicate web of loyalty she had relied upon was now strained to its limits. She had to act decisively, but also discreetly, ensuring that the rest of the guests remained unaware of the internal betrayal. And yet, even with the accomplice in custody, the mystery deepened. The spy had been caught, but had he revealed everything? Had the accomplice acted alone, or were there others still in play, hidden, waiting for the right moment to strike? Kate understood that this was far from over. The night was only half spent, and the game was just beginning. The palace hummed with the sounds of celebration, masking the quiet tension that gripped the inner walls. Kate stood poised, alert, calculating, knowing that any misstep could unravel everything. The accomplice had been revealed, yes, but the deeper, more dangerous forces were still at work. And as she watched the interplay of shadows and light, she sensed that the next revelation would be even more shocking, even more disruptive, and could change everything she thought she knew about loyalty, trust, and the stakes of the evening. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The palace seemed calm on the surface, the chandeliers casting a warm, golden glow over the carefully arranged tables, the flicker of candles reflecting in polished silver. Guests laughed softly, clinked glasses, and whispered pleasantries, entirely unaware that beneath this veneer of celebration, a storm of intrigue had been quietly brewing. Kate moved with the composure of a seasoned observer, though her mind raced with questions that refused to be silenced. The capture of the accomplice earlier had been a small victory, but it was only the beginning. The cryptic note, the spy's meticulous planning, the inside assistance. It all pointed to a network, a web of actors working in concert to infiltrate, observe, and potentially manipulate the palace's most private moments. Kate's pulse quickened as she considered the implications. If there were more operatives, hidden and patient, the threat was far from neutralized. She convened a discreet meeting with her closest security advisors in a side chamber. The conversation was urgent, tense, and methodical. Every detail was dissected. The timing of the spy's movements, the accomplice's interactions, and subtle hints of coordination that suggested higher-level orchestration. Kate knew instinctively that they were dealing with a sophisticated operation, one that required careful strategy to dismantle without causing alarm. Questions raced through her mind. How many others were involved? Had they already taken footage or gathered sensitive information? And most unsettling of all, what was their ultimate objective? The spy network wasn't acting impulsively. It was deliberate, calculated, and patient. They had chosen this moment, the Christmas Carol concert, for a reason. Kate had to uncover that reason before irreparable damage was done. Meanwhile, the accomplice, still under watch, provided only fragmented information. Their statements were evasive, contradictory, and carefully measured, suggesting either fear, loyalty to the spy, or a deeper network guiding their actions. Kate realized that every revelation carried risk. One wrong word, one misstep, and critical intelligence could be lost, or worse, manipulated to mislead. As the evening continued, Kate's instincts were tested. She moved discreetly among the staff and guests, noting anomalies in behavior, subtle exchanges of glances, and minor disruptions that could easily be dismissed by anyone else. Each observation was cataloged, assessed, and cross-referenced with prior events. Patterns emerged. Small at first, almost imperceptible, but significant. Someone was orchestrating movements, subtly signaling actions, and coordinating activities with precision. Then came a breakthrough. A staff member, previously overlooked, had been observed communicating with the accomplice through subtle gestures, hand signals, brief nods, the careful passing of an object unseen by others. It was a connection that confirmed Kate's worst fears. The network extended further than initially believed, with multiple operatives embedded within the palace environment. The breach wasn't just an isolated incident, it was an ongoing operation. Kate's mind worked rapidly. Every decision mattered. She had to contain the threat without causing panic, identify all actors involved, and prevent any sensitive material from being compromised. The stakes were high, and failure was not an option. This was no longer merely about protecting an event. It was about safeguarding her family, their reputation, and the sanctity of the palace itself. As the night progressed, Kate coordinated with her team, implementing additional surveillance measures and discreetly isolating potential risks. Every hallway, every corridor, every entry point became a calculated position in a chess game that demanded both patience and precision. And yet, for all their vigilance, the network proved adaptive, testing boundaries, probing weaknesses, and revealing just enough to keep Kate on edge without exposing the full extent of their plan. Then, in a moment that sent chills down her spine, a small, concealed device was discovered near the orchestra pit, a high-end camera capable of streaming and recording without detection. The sophistication of the technology confirmed her suspicions. This was not amateur work. The spy network had resources, planning, and an agenda far beyond simple curiosity. It was a coordinated effort to capture, control, and potentially weaponize sensitive material, and they had chosen the most opportune moment to execute it. The realization struck hard. This wasn't just a single spy or a lone accomplice. It was an organization, patient, methodical, and deeply strategic. They had studied the palace, understood its rhythms, and executed their plan with precision. Kate's pulse quickened as she considered the implications. Who else could be involved? And how far were they willing to go to achieve their objectives? As the night drew on, Kate remained vigilant. She understood that every glance, every whisper, and every small detail could be a clue, a piece of the puzzle that might reveal the network's full structure. And then, just as she believed they had contained the immediate threat, a new signal appeared. A subtle, almost imperceptible pattern in the movements of a guest that hinted at a deeper layer of coordination. The network was not finished. They were patient, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Kate's mind raced. The stakes were higher than ever, the threat more sophisticated, and the consequences potentially catastrophic. Every decision from this point forward had to be flawless. Every observation had to be precise. The network, clever and hidden, had only revealed a fraction of its capabilities, and she knew instinctively that what came next would test every ounce of her vigilance, courage, and strategic thinking. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The palace was cloaked in festive warmth, yet beneath the glittering chandeliers and polished floors, tension had woven an invisible web that ensnared every heartbeat. Kate's mind was a whirlwind of calculations, instincts, and strategies. The capture of the accomplice had been a minor victory, but it had revealed only the tip of the iceberg. The spy network was still active, still watching, and still waiting for the perfect moment to act. It began subtly. At first, nothing seemed amiss. Guests laughed, musicians tuned their instruments, and the carols flowed like a river through the halls. But Kate's trained instincts picked up anomalies. A shadow that lingered longer than necessary, a footstep too soft to belong to a guest, a glance exchanged that seemed rehearsed. These were not coincidences. They were signals. The spy was back in play, testing the waters, probing for weaknesses. Kate instructed her security team to heighten vigilance, to monitor every corridor, staircase, and entry point. Yet she knew instinctively that mere surveillance was not enough. The spy network was sophisticated, patient, and adaptable. They had anticipated contingencies, and they were ready to exploit even the smallest misstep. Then the first clear move occurred. A small camera, previously unnoticed, was found hidden within a decorative arrangement near the grand staircase. Its angle, carefully chosen, could capture footage of private areas, including conversations and gestures meant to remain confidential. The sophistication of the device confirmed what Kate had feared. This was no random act of curiosity. The spy network was executing a calculated plan to extract exclusive content, to control narrative, and perhaps to manipulate perception in ways that could be devastating. Kate's heart raced as she considered the possibilities. Who was watching through that camera? What had already been recorded? And most importantly, what would the network do with the material once it was obtained? Every second that passed without neutralizing the device increased the potential risk. She moved swiftly, coordinating with her team to remove the equipment while maintaining the illusion of calm for the guests. But the spy was clever, adaptive. Almost immediately, another signal emerged, a faint rustle in a hallway, a shadow moving against the grain of candlelight. Kate realized with a chilling certainty that the network had multiple operatives, each trained to operate with subtlety, precision, and patience. They were testing boundaries, gauging reactions, and waiting for the moment that would allow them to strike decisively. Kate's thoughts turned to strategy. She had to anticipate their moves, predict their intentions, and counteract them without revealing the depth of the threat to anyone except her closest advisors. Every decision was a high-stakes calculation. One wrong move could give the network an advantage, compromise private moments, or expose sensitive information to the world. And then it happened. A sudden movement near the orchestra pit, a figure crouched, adjusting a device hidden in plain sight. Kate's eyes narrowed. The spy had returned to action, bold and precise, and the network's audacity was breathtaking. Security personnel moved swiftly, but the figure had already begun their retreat, slipping into shadowed corridors with practiced ease. Kate's mind raced. The spy was not just recording. They were gathering information, testing security, and sending a clear message. The network was still in control, patient, and relentless. Every gesture, every step, every subtle maneuver was designed to provoke uncertainty, to create tension, and to manipulate the environment in their favor. She knew that the next move had to be decisive. Waiting was no longer an option. The network was probing, exploiting weaknesses, and setting the stage for a more significant strike. Kate's pulse quickened as she realized that the spy's actions were not isolated incidents. They were part of a larger strategy, a calculated game that had been months in the making. As the night continued, Kate coordinated with her team to track movements, secure sensitive areas, and anticipate potential breaches. Every hallway became a point of observation, every guest a potential clue, and every shadow a possible threat. The spy network had escalated, revealing both their sophistication and their audacity, and Kate understood that what came next would determine the outcome of the evening, and perhaps even the stability of the carefully maintained balance within the palace. And then, in a moment of near-silent chaos, a new clue emerged, an item, small and easily overlooked, left behind by the fleeing spy. It was subtle, yet unmistakable, a mark of the network, a signal that their operation was far from over. Kate's eyes widened as she realized the chilling truth. This was not just about surveillance. The spy network was orchestrating a plan with consequences that extended far beyond the Christmas Carol concert, and they were ready to push forward, no matter the obstacles in their path. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The palace had settled into an uneasy rhythm. Guests continued to enjoy the Christmas Carol concert, oblivious to the storm brewing behind the gilded doors. Kate moved with careful awareness, her senses tuned to the faintest shift in movement, the softest whisper that might indicate danger. The spy network was no longer a distant threat. It was active, adaptive, and determined. Every step, every glance, every corridor could conceal a calculated risk. Kate's mind, however, wasn't solely focused on action. It was focused on understanding. The question gnawed at her. Why? Why target this event? Why infiltrate a sacred, private gathering meant for celebration, family, and tradition? The spy's actions were bold, but without understanding the motive, predicting the next move was impossible. She began retracing the trail of the accomplice and the captured spy, piecing together fragments of information from cryptic notes, subtle gestures, and the items left behind. Each clue painted a picture of strategy, precision, and intent, but it also hinted at a larger narrative, one that went beyond the palace walls and reached into spheres of influence, media, and perception. The motive, when it began to emerge, was both shocking and deliberate. The network wasn't merely seeking footage. They were attempting to manipulate perception, to control narrative, and to exploit private moments for strategic gain. Their aim was power. Not physical, but social, cultural, and psychological. Every stolen frame, every secretly recorded conversation was a tool to shift influence, destabilize reputations, and shape public opinion. Kate's pulse quickened as she realized the depth of the threat. This was no ordinary intrusion. It was a carefully orchestrated campaign designed to assert control, spread misinformation, and sow chaos. And the timing, targeting a high-profile family event, was deliberate, chosen to maximize exposure and impact. Her thoughts turned to the implications. The spy network's reach could extend far beyond the palace, potentially impacting allies, staff, and even public perception. The consequences of inaction were unthinkable. Every minute wasted could allow sensitive material to slip through the cracks, giving the network leverage and influence that might never be fully recoverable. As Kate worked with her team to trace the network, she realized another chilling fact. The motive wasn't purely financial. There was an element of vendetta, of personal ambition, of influencing the perception of those in power. Whoever orchestrated this had studied not just the palace, but the people within it, their routines, their vulnerabilities, their relationships. This was intelligence work at the highest level, and Kate now understood the full stakes of the game she had been thrust into. The spy's movements became more predictable as patterns emerged. Subtle signals, minor adjustments, and repeated behaviors revealed a methodical approach designed to extract maximum value from every intrusion. Kate's security team increased their surveillance, adapting their own strategies to counter the spy network's methods. But the deeper the network's motives became clear, the more Kate realized that mere reactionary measures would not suffice. She had to anticipate, to strategize, and to act decisively. The accomplices' earlier cooperation provided fragmented insights, hinting at the network's hierarchy and ultimate objectives. There were multiple operatives, each assigned a role, each aware of the larger plan. The captured spy, when confronted, revealed a chilling ambition: to gather intimate, exclusive content, manipulate the resulting narrative, and influence perceptions on a scale that extended beyond the palace walls. The intention was subtle but powerful, a psychological leverage, a control of narrative that could reshape reputations and destabilize traditional power structures. Kate's realization was profound. The motive behind the attack was not just opportunistic, it was strategic. The network aimed to disrupt, to manipulate, and to assert influence, and they had chosen this night, this event, and these circumstances for maximum effect. It was audacious, calculated, and chillingly effective. And as the night deepened, Kate's awareness heightened. Every corridor, every guest, every staff member became a point of analysis, a potential clue in the unraveling of the network's intentions. The motives were no longer abstract. They were tangible, actionable, and immediate. Then, just when she thought she had grasped the full extent of the strategy, a new revelation struck. The network had anticipated some of her defensive measures. A minor detail overlooked, a subtle gap in surveillance, allowed a signal to pass, a reminder that the network was adaptive, cunning, and always a step ahead. Kate realized, with mounting urgency, that understanding the motive was only the beginning. Predicting the next move would require intuition, courage, and an unyielding focus on the stakes at hand. The palace seemed serene, but the undercurrents of danger were unmistakable. The spy network was motivated, methodical, and relentless, and Kate understood that the next encounter would reveal even deeper layers of deception, betrayal, and ambition. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The palace had long been a symbol of elegance, tradition, and composure, but tonight, beneath its gilded chandeliers and polished floors, tension had escalated to a nearly unbearable level. Kate moved through the corridors with measured poise, though every nerve in her body was alert, every sense sharpened. The spy network was no longer acting passively. It was executing a deliberate, high-stakes move. The first sign came subtly, a misaligned curtain, a shadow that didn't match the flow of candlelight, a faint mechanical hum near the orchestra pit. Kate froze, instinctively scanning the room. The spy, or one of his operatives, was at it again. The subtle signals she had been tracking for hours were now converging, pointing toward a single, audacious action. Her mind raced through contingency plans. Security was in position, guests were oblivious, and the accomplice had been captured, but that was only a fraction of the threat. The spy network had resources, intelligence, and audacity, and they were leveraging every advantage. The moment demanded precision, courage, and strategy. Then it happened. A sudden movement near a side entrance drew Kate's attention. A figure darted along the corridor, carrying a small, concealed device. The spy was attempting to retrieve, transmit, or manipulate sensitive material in real time. Kate's pulse surged. Every instinct screamed that this was the critical juncture. One wrong move, and the spy could escape with compromising information that would compromise privacy, reputation, and control. Kate acted. With her security team flanking her, she approached the corridor, signaling with subtle gestures to coordinate interception. The spy, sensing detection, moved with deliberate speed, but Kate's anticipation allowed her to cut off potential escape routes. Every second stretched taut as tension surged through the palace. The glittering halls now transformed into a high-stakes battleground. The confrontation was immediate, silent, and tense. The spy froze, caught in the narrowing corridor, his calm demeanor faltering under the pressure of Kate's vigilance. Security moved in, precise and deliberate, ensuring containment without alarming the guests. Every movement, every gesture was calculated to prevent panic while neutralizing the immediate threat. Kate's eyes locked on the operative. Questions raced through her mind. Who sent him? How deep was the network? What was their endgame? But there was no time for hesitation. The device was secured, the spy restrained, and the immediate danger neutralized, but the broader implications remained. This was not an isolated incident. It was part of a sophisticated operation designed to test, provoke, and manipulate. As she directed security to contain the situation, Kate's thoughts turned to strategy. The network had demonstrated patience, cunning, and adaptability. They had tested defenses, probed weaknesses, and executed precise actions with minimal exposure. If this confrontation was successful, it was a minor victory. If it failed, the consequences could be catastrophic. The spy, under questioning, revealed only fragments of the network's plan, each detail more alarming than the last. Multiple operatives, high-level coordination, and access to information that extended far beyond the palace suggested a campaign with far-reaching objectives. Kate understood that this was not merely about surveillance. It was about influence, leverage, and narrative control. Even with the immediate threat neutralized, the palace remained tense. Kate moved among her security team, reinforcing protocols, reviewing access points, and ensuring that every potential vector for compromise was secured. The network had revealed its sophistication, and Kate knew instinctively that their next move could be even more daring, calculated, and dangerous. Then, a subtle signal confirmed her fears. A staff member, previously overlooked, had altered their routine, subtly coordinating with someone outside the immediate perimeter. Kate's heart sank. The network had depth, patience, and adaptability. Neutralizing one operative had not dismantled the organization. It had only triggered the next stage. Kate took a deep breath, centering herself. The confrontation had been a victory in the moment, but the war of strategy, deception, and influence was far from over. The spy network was relentless, and their next move would challenge every skill, instinct, and ounce of courage she possessed. And just when she thought she had assessed the full scope, a new revelation emerged. A subtle pattern in communications, a tiny device overlooked in a decorative arrangement, hinting that the network's reach extended even deeper than she had imagined. The implications were staggering. The high-stakes confrontation had been only the beginning, and the night was about to escalate into a level of intrigue, danger, and revelation that no one could have anticipated. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The palace, bathed in golden candlelight and adorned with festive decorations, now felt like a stage set for something far darker than celebration. Kate moved through the corridors with the practiced composure of someone who had long learned to mask tension, though inside, her mind raced with the knowledge that the spy network was not done. The confrontation earlier had neutralized one operative, but it had also provoked a response, a bold maneuver that threatened to escalate the situation beyond anything she had anticipated. The first warning came in the form of subtle chaos. A small commotion near a side hall went unnoticed by guests, but immediately caught Kate's attention. A decorative panel had been subtly displaced, suggesting tampering. Her instincts, honed over years of navigating both royal protocol and public crises, screamed that this was no accident. Someone was attempting to access restricted areas, and the network's audacity had escalated. Kate immediately signaled her security team, implementing rapid response protocols while maintaining the illusion of calm for the audience. Every step had to be precise, every movement measured. The spy network was no longer testing. They were executing a daring plan, designed to seize control of the evening and extract sensitive content with maximum impact. As she moved closer to the source of the disturbance, Kate's eyes caught a figure slipping into a restricted corridor. The operative was agile, precise, and clearly experienced. It was as if the palace itself had become a chessboard, and every shadow, every corridor, every concealed door was a square to be controlled. Kate's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary intrusion. This was a meticulously planned operation with audacious scope. The bold maneuver was clear. The network had split its operatives, some distracting security, others moving with precision toward high-value targets. Kate realized with growing alarm that the spy strategy was multi-layered, designed to overwhelm defenses and exploit every weakness. The audacity was staggering. Her mind worked rapidly. Every protocol, every contingency plan, every observation from the past hours converged into a single strategy. She had to anticipate the network's moves, intercept the operatives, and protect sensitive areas, all while keeping the situation hidden from guests. Any misstep could allow the network to succeed, turning private moments into public spectacle and handing control to those who sought to manipulate it. As she coordinated with her team, the bold maneuver escalated. A device, hidden in plain sight within the orchestra area, began transmitting signals, real-time data, covertly capturing and potentially transmitting images and sound from the event. Kate's jaw tightened. The network's reach was far greater than anticipated. They were not just spies. They were engineers of influence, manipulation, and exposure. Kate moved swiftly, signaling security to intercept and neutralize the device. Every second was critical. The slightest delay could allow the network to gain leverage, capture material, or coordinate further actions. And yet, even as the immediate threat was addressed, Kate knew instinctively that this maneuver was only one layer of a broader, more complex operation. Then came the most unsettling revelation. The network had anticipated her response. Another operative, previously undetected, emerged from a side corridor, attempting to access a secure communication line. Kate's eyes narrowed. This was a coordinated, multi-front operation, designed to challenge every skill, every strategy, and every ounce of composure she possessed. The audacity, precision, and planning were unlike anything she had encountered. The confrontation that followed was tense, precise, and dramatic. Security intercepted the operative, neutralizing the immediate threat, but the network's audacity had demonstrated something far more concerning: their patience, cunning, and adaptability. Neutralizing one operative did not dismantle the network. It only revealed the depth and sophistication of their campaign. Kate realized the implications immediately. The bold maneuver was not an isolated act. It was a signal, a statement, a demonstration of capability. The network was capable, strategic, and relentless. And as she assessed the situation, she understood that the next stage would likely involve even higher stakes, greater risk, and more audacious attempts to breach privacy and manipulate outcomes. The palace hummed with the continued sounds of celebration, masking the storm of intrigue that had erupted in its hidden corridors. Kate stood poised, vigilant, and strategic, knowing that the bold maneuver was only the beginning. The network's next move could change the course of the evening, the narrative, and the perception of everyone involved. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The palace, still resonating with the soft strains of carols, had become a labyrinth of tension and uncertainty. Kate moved through the corridors with calculated awareness, her mind balancing vigilance with strategy. The bold maneuver by the spy network had shaken the calm, exposing vulnerabilities, testing defenses, and demonstrating a capacity for audacious disruption. But the most unsettling revelation was yet to come, a link that connected the intrusions to someone of unexpected influence, someone who could amplify the consequences far beyond the walls of the palace. It began with subtle clues. Patterns in the spy's equipment, fragments of correspondence intercepted, and anomalies in the accomplice's behavior. Kate's team had been analyzing these details for hours, each observation revealing layers of planning and coordination. And then, in one carefully examined note, a name appeared, one that sent a chill through the room. It was a high-profile figure, known for influence, connections, and the capacity to manipulate narratives on a massive scale. The realization hit Kate like a bolt of lightning. The spy network was not acting in isolation. This connection changed everything. The network's audacity, the precision of the maneuvers, and the strategic timing all made sense now. They were backed, directly or indirectly, by someone with resources, reach, and an agenda that extended far beyond the palace. Kate felt the weight of responsibility settle like a stone in her chest. Protecting the event was no longer just about preventing embarrassment or safeguarding privacy. It was about countering a coordinated effort that could reshape perception, influence opinion, and manipulate the narrative at the highest level. As she processed this, Kate realized that the spy's movements, the accomplice's behavior, and the bold maneuvers were all part of a sophisticated strategy designed to create maximum disruption while minimizing immediate detection. The high-profile link gave them leverage, authority, and insight that ordinary operatives could not have achieved. This was strategic genius, and it had been aimed squarely at her family, their event, and their private moments. Her team immediately began cross-referencing data, surveillance, and intercepted communications. Every detail suggested the network had prior knowledge of the palace's layout, the event schedule, and the positions of key personnel.